before Christopher Mcquarrie became well known for his many collaborations with Tom Cruise. He became an Academy Award winner for his original screenplay for the classic 1995 film The Usual Suspects. But even with an Academy Award under his belt, it took him 5 years to get his directorial debut off the ground. And that film became the cult classic The Way of the Gun. During the time of the film's release, Christopher Mcquarrie did an interview with Pop Matters. I'm paraphrasing, but he described how his Academy Award win for The Usual Suspects was more of a hindrance as opposed to leverage when it came down to getting his film made. The Academy Award win was more geared towards the studios trusting him to make their movies, but not necessarily his own. So he found himself negotiating with studios, whether that meant taking less money or giving up control of casting, just so he can have more control of the story. But when all was said and done and this film was finally released, the budget really didn't hold it back and the casting was damn near perfect. The Way of the Gun follows two drifters who embark on a risky kidnapping job involving the surrogate mother carrying the child of a wealthy couple. But unbeknownst to them, this seemingly straightforward job starts to take a dark turn. It turns out that the wealthy husband for the surrogate child, who's played by Scott Wilson, who a lot of us know as Herschel from The Walking Dead, well, he's a very powerful guy, and he will stop at nothing to get his son back. This sets in motion the cat and mouse game to retrieve the surrogate mother, who's played by Juliette Lewis. The film is built around ambiguity, with every single character having their own ulterior motive. And if you're not paying close attention, you might miss those small little details within every conversation. This film is not only about retrieving money, it also ties in family, but almost to a fault. And I'll dive into the details on that more throughout this video, but first I want to touch on these characters. The two drifters who kidnapped the surrogate mother are played by Ryan Phillippe and Benicio del Toro. Their names are Parker and Longbow. These are the real names of the title characters in the 1960s film Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's said that the real-life Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid were gunned down by the Bolivian army. In the 1969 film, they're shown running into gunfire right before the frame freezes and the film ends. But in The Way of the Gun, Christopher Mcquarrie extends on this and he shows us an epic gunfight. I'm not going to go over all the Easter eggs with this film, I just really want to highlight its importance to me, and hopefully that entices you to check it out if you haven't already. However, if you are interested in some more Easter eggs, I did find a pretty good article on Film School Reject's website, and I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description. But focusing back on the characters in this film, I really love this cast. Like, this is around the time where I was getting more familiar with the faces of everyone in this cast. Like Ryan Phillippe, he was on the come up. Like, my first time seeing him was in I Know What You Did Last Summer, and he was a standout character in that film. But he was able to further prove that he had some star power with the 1999 release of Cruel Intentions. I remember reading somewhere that he didn't want to get typecast as this pretty boy type of an actor, so he really fought to get this role. You know, he gained a little bit of weight to make himself look a little bit more muscular, got some facial hair. It's a much more rugged role than he's ever done before, something that wasn't really geared towards teenagers at that time. He wasn't Christopher McQuarrie's first choice, but I guess he showed enough enthusiasm to where he gave him a shot. And even though I like his character, I do feel like from an acting standpoint, he did try a little bit too hard to be menacing in some of his scenes. And me just knowing his earlier work, it was just very difficult for me to buy it. It felt more like acting. But still, I think he did a great job. It was just difficult to kind of buy into him being some guy from the wrong side of the tracks, but I cannot say that about Benicio del Toro. There are two characters in this film that tie when it comes down to who's my favorite, and Benicio del Toro's portrayal as Longbow is one of them. He's a lot less empathetic than his counterpart, and he just comes across cool as hell. This was a career-defining year for Benicio del Toro. He did this movie, and he won the Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actor in his role in Traffic, and that's another movie that's just straight heat. Speaking of heat, this is probably the best gunfight film that I've seen since the 1995 Michael Mann film. The gunshots just sound so realistic, like a gun range. It doesn't sound like your generic sound effects that we got throughout the 90s. Like when shit pops off here, it sounds like shit's really popping off. The surrogate mother who's carrying the baby of this billionaire and his trophy wife is played by Juliette Lewis, and Juliette Lewis is iconic. I just want to take a moment to appreciate her work throughout the 90s. I mean, take a look at this lineup. 1991, Cape Fear. 1993, California. 1994, Natural Born Killers. 1995, Strange Days. 1996, From Dusk Till Dawn. After 1996, she takes a little bit of a break from crime thrillers until she returns in 2000 with The Way of the Gun. I'm not exactly sure who her agency was at the time, but they were giving her bangers. She was the it girl when it came down to 90s cinema. And even though her character in this film is used more so as cattle, she will not hesitate to pull the trigger. Now, I'm sure there's some films in between this time, but I didn't see her come back to this type of form until Yellow Jackets. But after this film, it seemed like she lost a little bit of steam in Hollywood. I didn't know it at the time, but The Way of the Gun seemed to be the end of that epic run that she was on. However, it was not done in vain. I still go back to every single one of these movies, and they are certified classics. The two bodyguards in this film who are assigned to protect her are played by Taye Diggs and Nicky Katt. I didn't know too much about Nicky Katt at the time. I mean, I know he had a small role in the Doom generation, and he also starred in Boiler Room, which came out the same year as The Way of the Gun. But Taye Diggs was on the come up. He got all the women wet with his role in How Stella Got Her Groove back in 1998, and then a year later in 1999, he had two #1 hit movies back to back with The Best Man and House on Haunted Hill. As a parent, I would say that these two played very well in the film. They had this very stoic, non-emotional type of demeanor. They have this epic scene with James Caan, who plays Sorno, in this interrogation room, and the way James Caan is talking to these two guys, this is some of the best dialogue you're going to get in the movie.
And I can promise you a day of reckoning that you will not live long enough to never forget.
That line alone is what makes Sorno my favorite character in this film. Every scene that James Caan is in, you are just forced to watch his character. You are completely locked in. Well, at least I was. And that's not to be a surprise. I mean, this is James Caan we're talking about. This is Sonny Corleone that we're talking about. With every scene, you can just tell that his character is miles ahead of everyone else. Speaking of scenes, this film has a lot of memorable ones, especially the opener with Sarah Silverman.
Hey, Dickless, get off the fucking car! Your fucking ass!
Shut that cunt's mouth or I'll come over there and start her head.
If this movie doesn't capture your attention in the first 5 minutes, then I really don't know what the hell is wrong with you. Another standout scene is the back and forth between Benicio del Toro and James Caan. Christopher Mcquarrie said that he wanted a scene with a veteran actor and a newcomer. And even though these two guys are on the opposite side, there's a mutual respect being built up in this conversation. I've always had that respect for James Caan, especially with his portrayal in The Godfather. That's next to none. But this is the scene that really made me start paying attention to Benicio del Toro. And his role in Traffic just solidified it. The kidnapping scene is another call out. Even though I think Ryan Phillippe may have overacted in some of his scenes, this one right here, he really carried out well. And again, I don't think he's a bad actor at all. I just think he just tried a little bit too hard to be menacing. But this scene with the kidnapping, from the dialogue, how they play off each other, the tension that's being built up, it's definitely one of my favorites. And last but not least, we gotta talk about the final showdown. This is hands down one of the best gunfights I've ever seen in a movie. Well, as far as realism goes, it's bloody, it's grimy, things are moving so fast, you're killing people on your own team, it's crazy. The film doesn't hold back on humor either. In the middle of the gun scene, there's this part where Ryan Phillippe jumps into this empty fountain where the money is being propped up, and he just lands on all this broken glass. We also get this scene with Benicio del Toro and the doctor who's delivering the baby, and the doctor goes kind of blank, and Benicio del Toro is kind of mouthing these words to kind of wake him up out of it. Then there's the final scene between Sorno and Abner, who's played by Jeffrey Lewis, who happens to be Juliette Lewis's real father. If you haven't seen this movie yet, I'm not going to call out what's going on in this scene, but they draw it out so much that it just becomes comical. And I can't make a video about The Way of the Gun if I do not continuously call out how impressive the dialogue is. Like, this dialogue is next to Tarantino, if not better.
As long as I'm carrying this baby, and you two don't have the money, I'm alive.
We're not talking about how long you're gonna live, hon. We're talking about how slow you're gonna die.
This movie has so many quotables that I find myself referencing them to this day in just random conversations.
It's called CYA, you fucking moron.
Cover your ass.
He's 1 against 2 who killed 2 of my 4. I suggest you let him see your A.
Now, this film isn't perfect. It can be a little clunky, and there are some connections between the characters that's a little too convenient. But all in all, this is a very good directorial debut by Christopher Mcquarrie. This is a cult classic hidden gem. If you haven't seen The Way of the Gun, you gotta check it out. It's worth your time, and hopefully this video helps showcase that. So if you got any value out of it, give me a like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really looking forward to the new year, and I got a lot of films I want to cover, so hopefully you're around for it. So until next time, peace.
Can't you people see there are guns here? Get the fuck out!